boys and girls. Ken Smith, KenSmithFishing.com. Here inside our home in Zavala, Texas, the world headquarters. It's pretty chilly out in the boat barn and everything's wet. So I thought I'd film in here this morning. It's Sunday morning. What is today's date? April the 14th. So yesterday was the BFL on Toledo Bend. And I'll tell you that had I done this video Friday night, I was pretty frustrated. Second tournament in a row I've had challenges with the FLW staff, and I got paired boater on boater. So Friday night I was laying in bed, not sleeping, which was not related to fishing. It was just related to everything else going on. And I thought, you know what? I'm just going to go have fun. So I got paired with this young man by the name of River Lee. I believe River's 18 years old. I can tell you the young man is a very good fisherman. He's an offshore guy. He spends a lot of time over here on Rayburn. He's a college fisherman. He has a very calm demeanor about himself. And I have fished enough over the years to know when a guy's, you know, we're going to crush him or I'm on all these fish. And interestingly, when he called me Friday night, FLW had not even communicated to us that we were boater on boater. We both assumed we were boaters. I don't know how in the world they could not communicate that, but they didn't. And he said, I'll meet you, you know, at Toledo Tackle. You can throw your stuff in my boat. And I'm like, what are you talking about? And it dawned on him before it dawned on me that we were fishing boater on boater. But that's a different story. So he decided to come with me, which was very nice of him. I think in this case I got the advantage of being the old guy. And we talked, and I was on some fish way down south. So I did fish around south a little bit. And matter of fact, let's look at a little bit of practice footage I've got right here.
All right, good morning, boys and girls. Ken Smith, KenSmithFishing.com with my old 20. How long have we known each other?
You really want me to say it out loud?
Say it out loud.
About 30.
So we met when we were 6.
Yeah.
30 years ago. Brian, as y'all know, is a guide over on Rayburn, but he's been splitting his time going back and forth between Rayburn and Toledo. And I happened to get really fortunate and catch him on a day he's not booked. So he said he'd come fish with me over here. So we're gonna go poke around here on Toledo Bend. Sorry, on Toledo Bend, and see if we can't show you guys kind of what's going on. And then Brian's also gonna give us a Rayburn report. We know we got a lot of guys coming to the Big Bass Splash here in 2 or 3 weeks. So he's gonna give y'all a Rayburn report. We'll throw that in on the back side of this. So obviously I'm talking and not driving, but let's go fish and see what we can figure out. This ought to be fun. It is chilly this morning. We are keying up the proverbial rope, but I'm back here.
Did you see that? Did you see the size?
I did.
Here. Here's a little one. On a.
Oh man, you choked it. I'm picking a backlash out.
Oh. Yeah.
You're on camera. Brian Branham showing you how to catch 10s or 12s.
Brian Brown.
Inches. Power pole down. Total stillness. Complete seriousness. Angling professional. Pointing at the fish, which for all you amateur anglers, it's brilliant when you're out here practicing to point at fish. That way nobody else knows what you're doing. Of course, when you're also power pole down with both of you staring at a hole in the water. He's calling his shots. He's got him. Play by play. He's got him. He doesn't have him. Oh, the tap. You ever do the tap? Oh, he's trying to tap him up. Oh, I see a nose coming in from 3 o'clock there, 4 o'clock. Is that a nose? This is why I could never be a co-angler, because of days like this where you have to stand and watch a guy do this for hours. And he's got about 3 more pitches before I'm putting the trolling motor back on.
After this, I'm done.
He's calling the ball. shine on my shoulder.
He's happy with our homostasis here. We're all in.
He's bolted, said I'm out of here.
Yeah.
That guy's got a white shirt on now. I'm out of here.
Yeah, that's out. That's where we're done with. We didn't even see
I
it.
told Brian that one on the nest was a giant. He wouldn't believe me. Look how big it is. That's about an 8-pounder.
Going past it. Stop. You got one? Is that large, not bad? Large, not bad. I hit that idle. See if we can catch it.
So I practiced with my buddy Brian Branham a little bit. Brian's been on the lake quite a bit. And I'll tell you, so Brian's guiding back and forth on Rayburn and Toledo. And if you have not been on, if you didn't know this, Brian is equally dangerous on Toledo as he is on Rayburn. So if you're looking to book a trip on either one of those lakes, he goes back and forth, and he'd spent a couple of days on Toledo this week. We shook off quite a few fish because of where they were in the hay grass. And we basically didn't bust on them, but he kind of gave me a sense of what was going on. And he and I had talked about it the night before. He had guided a guy earlier in the week to help him get on some fish. And I said, I don't want to go anywhere near that, so we didn't. I just want to have a sense of where the fish are in the process. And Brian's comment to me was, these fish have not spawned down here. They're fish spawning, but he was catching mostly big, pretty pre-spawn fish, not a lot of real beat-up post-spawn fish. So I knew that going in. So River and I are talking Friday night, or I guess Saturday morning, literally sitting before takeoff. And I said, you know, what do you think? Where do you want to start? And he said, well, I'm around a few fish, but I've only really, he'd been there, I think, 3 days. He said, I've really only caught one decent fish. And I said, where are you? And he told me, and I said, man, I know that area really well. And based on what I saw, why don't we start there? It's about mid-south, kind of 6 mile housing area. And as the day progresses, if the weather would let us, so we had a really bad storm coming in, we'll work our way south. So that's what we did. We started on his stuff. And I don't know, so we had a lot of rain, so I don't know how much footage I got. Unfortunately, I know I don't have footage of either one of my big fish of the catches because it was pouring down rain when it happened. But let's look at our first few fish, and then I'll tell you the conversation we had. Okay, so right around in here, we went, I caught a keeper, he caught a keeper. I caught a keeper, he caught a keeper. We're both on the front deck. We're just kind of sharing water. Look, it is what it is, right? I'm fishing against the guy next to me, and the guy next to me obviously can catch him. And I'll tell you, I knew that. Number one, I knew that because when we talked that morning, he wasn't like, man, let's go to my fish, I'm crushing them. You could just tell he was around some fish. He knew he was around some fish. He wasn't excited about it, but I could also tell he was a grinder. And I don't know how I could sense that, but then once I saw him catch a few fish, he didn't catch a 3-pounder and go Iconelli on me. I mean, he was catching his fish, and it was time to catch the next fish, which tells me the guy fishes a lot and can catch fish. So I think I had 4 fish. I had 3. And then as a matter of fact, that's how it happened. I had 3, he had 2. He makes a flip over as we're going out. I was fishing these little, I call them viney, so they're little viney grass on top of the water. And he had been fishing around in there some, but had not really flipped it. So we fished through there, and I spun around and flipped over there and caught one about 3 pounds.
surprised me. Went thump. Well, that's a bite. Showing up. Chunkier fish.
Yeah, that's a decent one. He looked a lot bigger than
He did, didn't he?
I thought.
I mean, heck,
I thought that too, honestly.
heck, that's a 4-pounder.
And that's like a 2.5, maybe.
That fish might go 3.
And that was the light bulb moment for both of us, that the fish were in there, but they weren't going to be real active. So it had cooled off quite a bit. And he said he thought he had seen some fish on the nest in there, but they were all smaller fish. But those bigger fish, they're not going to get generally where it's real easy to see them. So we had fished through there, and I said, let's not fish this. Let's go back out and fish back into the wind. Wind's blowing 20, 25 miles an hour, so I can control the boat so our boat's not constantly blowing up on the fish, or I'm blowing those fish out with the trolling motor. Well, as I start out, he makes a little pitch over behind me and catches a, I think it was one that being a 486. So he has 3 now, but we were both thinking it was only going to take 13 or 14 pounds based on the wind to get a check. And we're also both realizing that it's going to be pretty tough overall, and especially boater on boater standing next to each other. So I had 4, now he's got 3 with what probably is the fish that will get him a check. And I said, you know, I started to say something to you this morning, and I should have. I said, we should have just agreed this morning to split whatever we win. And he said, I'm good with that. And I said, no, I said, that's not fair. I said, you've got a fish now that's probably going to get you a check. And he said, I don't care. Let's just have fun. So we agreed right then to split what we won. And we went around a corner, and I caught an 8-pounder on a ribbit. And it was in, I kid you not, it was in that much water. I fired that, and I wish I had this on camera, because it was right in front of the boat. I fired that ribbit up there and pulled it through that little hay grass sticking up out of the water about that tall. It was on a little secondary point going into a drain where those fish were working in there to spawn, and she just murdered it. I got a hook in her. I never let her get down. I just got her and got her up high with that loose Carolina rig rod, and got her drug over there and put her in the boat. Matter of fact, she tried to dive under the boat, and I saw I had her stuck right there with that big hook, and he just dipped at her and flipped her in the boat. And I looked at him and I said, well, we both got checks now. And we slid around in there a little bit further, and I flipped in a spot again amongst that viney stuff on top of the water, and the bait went down and moved sideways, and I swung on it and I missed a fish, and I said, that's a nest fish. And I had drifted up on that fish, stepping on my power poles the whole time, and now that fish, or where I had just missed that fish, is literally right under the boat where your reels go. And I just free spooled my line down there, and I felt her pick her up, and I stuck it. And when I stuck her, I said, now, you'll probably see on the footage here, we're not netting most of these fish because they're just 2-pounders and we're boat flipping them. As soon as I stuck that fish, I said, big fish. He grabbed it, she went under the boat, she come back out, he dipped netted. I had no idea what it was. It was a 6-pounder. So now I've got 2 that weigh 14 and I'm pushing 20 pounds. And it was a fun day. Those fish over there are absolutely still pre-spawn. A lot of them are. The 8-pounder had just a barely start of a bloody tail. If you don't know much about spawning fish, John Hope talks about it a lot in his book. Big females do not go up on a nest, according to John, and I believe him because he's tracked them, and spawn and back out. They spawn multiple times on multiple nests with multiple bucks, and they do that to make sure that some of their fry survive. So I think this is probably a fish that had been up on the nest and spawned a little bit and back out. She obviously still had some eggs in her, but she had a little bit of the start of a bloody tail. So I suspect this was just a big female that had moved up there in the process of spawning. So I've got, I think, some pretty good footage on this. I want to talk again about the gear I used today. So let's look at a little bit more footage, and then I'll come back and we'll talk about the gear we were using.
I thought it was just a small one. Look at that. Look at that. I wonder if that's what did it. That's a cargo eye.
Oh, show back to the camera. Take it back to show the camera. swim off with it, brother. I was down there looking at it. I'm like, well, where's my bait going?
Oh God, he keep. He got a lot bigger. Yeah.
So I'll probably have commentary about this later, but River and I drew out together, boater on boater, for the BFL today here on Toledo Bend. And he caught a 4-pounder. I had 3 or 4, and then his third fish was a 4-pounder. And I said, you know, earlier in the day I meant to say this. I said, we should just agree, since we're fishing against each other and we're having a lot of fun, let's just split whatever we win. And he said, man, that's fine with me. Now, he said that at the point when he had the biggest fish in the boat. I come around a corner back out here a minute ago. And I caught that one, and then I caught that one. And it's looking like maybe we covered our expenses. What do you think, River?
Do what?
You think we covered our expenses?
Oh, dude, definitely.
So now we're trying to get his 5th fish so we can both cash a check. It's been a lot of fun so far. We've had some ugly, ugly weather. The big one was on a rivet on a little main lake point. It's pepper grass. And then we come back in one of these little drains, and I flipped a Cinco, a weighted Cinco up, and the fish swam off with it, and I missed it, and I just dropped it right onto the boat and caught that 5 or 6 pounder. So it's been a lot of fun so far. Good stuff. Yep.
No, he ain't that big. He got smaller, but
He's in the net.
that's
5.
Hit it on the paws.
5 on 5.
So I had a sense this week there was a good chance it was going to be close quarters combat fishing over there. So I had ordered a new rod, and that is not it. That is it, I'm sorry. So I had ordered this rod. So this is a Custom Speed Series light rod. This is a flipping jigs, tubes, and plastics rod. It is a LCL FRH. It's a 7.6, and it's a heavy action rod, but it's got a fast tip. I also paired that, which by the way, this is a great reel. This is a TP1HA. If you haven't seen this reel, I know it's going to be hard to see, but there's a little dial right there that you can set your line size, so you don't have to remember what your line size is. You can see it on there. But I spooled this rod with 25-pound Seagar fluorocarbon flipping line. It's I think just about unbreakable. It's extremely abrasion resistant. That water down there we were fishing, although it's not gin clear, it's very clear. And I knew from the day before I had gotten some bites flipping that hay grass with braid, but I knew that the bites were going, it was extremely highly pressured water. So I wanted to get every bite I could get, so I dropped down and fished fluorocarbon. 5/8 ounce tungsten sinker, and as we've talked about before, 3/0 EWG superline hook. So it's just that little extra wide gap superline hook, and that was my rig for flipping. Now, for my rivet fish, you guys know one of my favorite rods in the series is a very inexpensive rod. It's just that mock rod. This one's called the Flippin' Stick. It's a MHFS. It's a 7.6. This is a heavier rod. I was throwing this with 50-pound Seagar braid, and I'm throwing it just on a basic loose speed spool. It's not an expensive reel. It's a great reel. It's a great setup. That was my rivet setup. You're also going to see, I think, some of the footage I caught. I caught some fish on a hollow body swim bait, and on that one I'm using the Magnum jig rod again in that custom light series. That's probably my favorite rod. It's sort of the mid-price range Lew's rod. And by the way, I know some of these rods are hard to find. Some of the more expensive rods are hard to find in some of the stores. If you see a guy that's got this Lew's thing on, just walk up to him and ask him if you can feel some of these rods, if you can check them out. We're all glad to share these with you. If you happen to be through Zavala and I'm here at the world headquarters and you want to check out some rods or some reels, just swing by. You know, Lew's really was a reel company that kind of got in the rod business, and they have nailed it. They've got some fantastic rods now, especially on their high-end stuff. They've got some great rods. I'm extremely pleased to be fishing with Lew's stuff. So that was my setup there. That is that, again, 50-pound braid, cigar braid. That is that owner drop spin hook. I don't know exactly what it's called, but that's a 5/0 hook. So when they bite it, you stab them. I did not lose a single fish yesterday. I did actually lose one fish. Actually, I didn't lose it. I had another big fish eat that ribbit kind of out over, there was off one of those little shallow points, there were some lily pads, and it was another big one. But fortunately for me and for my partner, even though it was an individual tournament, we were able to win yesterday. So 21-12, we also won big bass. I say we, it was an individual tournament, but it was absolutely a team effort. And River also cashed a check. I think he finished 14th. So we were able to split about $5,700, which makes us both really happy. I have made a new friend. I'm really looking forward to getting to know this young guy and getting to fish with him some more. So it was a super, super fun day. What else do I want to tell you guys? So sort of in summary, you know, Toledo, based upon what Brian had shared with me, was really still sort of pre-spawn action going on. If I were going over there, I can tell you I would not spend much time deep. I've got a really good friend who's a super good deep fisherman, and I know I saw him fishing shallow yesterday. Although he didn't catch them, I also know he had a very spectacular practice. So right now, I would not be deeper than 6 or 8 feet on Toledo Bend, at least on the south end of Toledo Bend. I don't know what's going on up north. I had a great time, made a new friend, and we sort of took some lemons, being boater on boater drawing, made some lemonade, and we had a great time together. So thanks for tuning in. There'll be a Rayburn report right behind this. And then also I've got something special for you guys I want to share with you that I think you're going to be really excited about. So stick around, guys. Thanks.